Happy peeps, Suzanna here today to share with you this layout that I created for Spiegel Mom Scraps using 2 of the new November sequence releases. If you use the code Suzanna15, you can save 15% on anything, including dazzlers and textures that are on sale over at the store. So I use this digital cut file by Paige Taylor Evans. And instead of using it as the background, I actually used it as a mask. So I have some Heidi Swap Shine. I sprayed it first. You can see it's very subtle there. And then I flicked some mist to create some larger droplets that sort of more mimic a more organic look to the leaf shadows. And my original intent was to use these 2 pictures of my daughter at our Fall Fest that happened a couple of weekends ago. October, it was around the 17th, I think. And we always have a pumpkin patch, and each family is entitled to 1 pumpkin. So I have these 2 pictures, and my intent was to create a quilt out of some fall papers. So I was going to put a square within a square. So I had these papers from Pebbles, and I thought that saying, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, and I don't end up using it, and I can't read it that's small on my screen, but I thought that I would use some rectangles and some squares to create a quilt on top of that sprayed image there. So you can see I cut pieces that are rectangular and square and choose different fall colors that complement the colors that are in that leaf pattern there, and start to arrange them in a pattern that I think might work for me. I have created a lot of fall layouts lately, and I have a lot of scraps, and I've repurposed a lot of the scraps of these papers, but I was getting a little tired of using those same papers over and over and over again. So I did use a few, but I wanted to really get that more blue that's in there because it matched with the 2 sequence collections that I chose to use. And I wasn't actually sure whether I was going to use 1 photo or 2, and I realized that I didn't quite cut the picture square the first time, so I had to trim that off a little bit, and I still am not sure that I'm going to use both of those photos, because I wasn't sure how I was going to make that bigger photo square match in the layout that I had created with these smaller squares. These squares are 1 1/4 inches. And so I thought I might circumnavigate my problem by having that larger square sticking out the bottom there. But the disproportionateness of that sort of bothered me. So I decided to cut more squares of different colors and perhaps make it more of a rectangular shape. Sorry about that. My phone just pinged in. I tried to make it more of a rectangular shape, but that wasn't pleasing to my eye either. So then I rearranged the squares and took out the long rectangles and thought that maybe I'll make a top and a bottom. That didn't work. So maybe I'll just put them all together and put them in a row. And I liked that. That was pleasing to my eye, but I didn't like it at the bottom because it was too heavy at the bottom. So in a minute, I will shift them all to the top. Yay! That's going to work. So I do leave them up the top, and it does allow me to use both pictures, but I feel like I need something at the bottom to sort of ground that. I also like how it allows you to see more of the mixed media background that I had created. I did pull out some vellum, and I really wanted to incorporate the vellum into the layout somehow, and I had thought that maybe I would create more leaves with the vellum, but it didn't quite work. So I found that blue border, and I thought that was perfect for a little bit of a footer to the bottom of the page that balanced out the squares up the top and that blue down the bottom. So this is the die cut file that I used digital cut file that I used as a mask, and I want to incorporate it somehow into the layout. I am putting a white mat around my pictures. While the background is white, I do find that by having the mat, I'm better able to define the pictures a little bit. So I'm going to head upstairs and I'm going to actually quilt a stitched border around each of those squares. And while I'm up there, I also decide to stitch a couple of the leaves, and I created sequins pockets as well. So on the one of the green, not green, I'm sorry. So you can see there the sequins pockets that I created. I used protector over the pattern paper and just sewed in some sequins. So there is the vellum. I had cut out a few of the leaves and stitched vellum down, just stitched down the center vein of the leaf with the vellum in the background, which just created a fun effect of that fall leaf to use somewhere. And then there is the first quilted sequins pocket that I created, and that sequins pocket has the puppy dog tails sequins in it that matches with that orange paper. And then the blue pocket, which I'm cutting and trimming now, has the Roadtrips and Sunshine sequins in it. So I used those two different mixes, and they were perfect to add a fall feel to my fall page here. So I cut through all of that for you, but basically I just cleaned up the back of each of those squares. And now I'm going to adhere them down, and I do sort of finger fold the edges of those squares a little bit to give it a little bit more of an organic distressed look. Trim off the bottom of that paper there, and I take out some Heidi Swapp Shine, I believe that's peach, to just add a little bit more color, and some Shimmerz Dazzler, that's ruby red, and again just to add a little bit more fall color to that bottom space there. And I wanted a little bit more distress to the edges of those papers, and because my squares don't go all the way across from the left to the right, I trimmed off a little bit of that blue edge there, and then after I get the pictures down, I'm going to embellish the rest of the layout and put a few more of the layers to the bottom of that page there. So by putting the squares at the top, I was able to use both pictures. So those are the two leaves that I have backed with vellum, and you'll see the sort of more opaque look closer up in the close-ups and the effect that leaves on the layout. I did trim a few more of the leaves because I figured that those two down the bottom there, while I had the whole effect from the mixed media, I wanted to use a few more to just complement the layout and create my trio of three that I like to create with my layouts. So there's two leaves poking out the right side of the picture, and then I'll put two more leaves poking out the left side of the other side of that photo cluster there. So it was nice to be able to multi-purpose the die cut file. It served as both a mask, and then I flipped it over and it served as die cuts on the layout as well. So I like the visual triangle that trio creates. It looked a little bit funny just sort of floating up the top of the layout there, and was much better. The effect was much better with them tucked behind the pictures. So I do create a thread wad or thread ball to stick with the leaves, again, just for a little bit more of an organic look to the layout. I always struggle to get the thread laying the way that I want to, especially this gold metallic thread. But once you do get it stuck the way that you want to, it's always worth the work. Not that it's a ton of work, but can be frustrating sometimes. So there are and I don't use thread on that bottom cluster there because it doesn't really need it. So there's the bulk of the layout. You can see the sequins sort of shaking in those pockets right there, the quilted pockets. And now I pull out a collection of fall goodies, ephemera, and stickers that I have collected from Cocoa Daisy, Cartabella, Pretty Little Studios, Ashley Horton's collection, and I just play around and see what's pleasing to me. So that little banner there says fall, and I knew I wanted to finish it with Fest, and it looks great there under the picture, but you'll see that I end up moving it, and I'll explain to you why when I get there. These are from Cocoa Daisy, some puffy stickers, and I liked that Cocoa Daisy also had included blue in this collection. And actually, a lot of these papers that I used are from that same Cocoa Daisy kit that I got 2 kits ago, I want to say, maybe last year even. I'm not sure, to be honest. I pull apart my Cocoa Daisy kits, and I know what's Cocoa Daisy, but I don't always know when it's not exclusive where it's come from. So here are some Simple Stories stickers, and again, I just put things in places that make sense, that are pleasing to the eye, and stay part of that visual triangle. And I love the way that arrow from Ashley just sort of accentuates that footer that I've got down there, and the little yellow label adds some of that yellow color so that I've tied all of the colors in the top to the bottom down here. I have a few more of those stickers, and I play around with them, but really less is more in this setting because the pattern papers are a little busy, and they speak for themselves, and so I also don't have to use things just because I have them. I pull out a few more of the sequins, the orange and the blue ones, and again, just to tie the top of that layout down into the bottom. And I like the way that those sequences complement sort of the larger missplatters. So this is where I pull out the One Canoe 2 gold letters to finish off Fest in the title, but I don't like the way that everything sort of is weighing on that outside of the page. So by shifting the banner over, I can complete the title that says Fall Fest, and I realize that the banner is sort of hanging unattached to anything. I know that might bother some people, but it doesn't really bother me because it allows me to have the title that I want, and it is at least anchored to the photo. So that, my friends, I'm going to move that pumpkin down to the bottom there because it just works better, and the white, and I'll put a gold star next to it just to tie in those letters. And that, my friends, is my layout for Spiegel Mom Scraps. Enjoy the close-ups. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask down in the box below. And if you don't subscribe, we'd love to have you join us. I try and post every Thursday. I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.